I mentioned the NL East, and I mentioned one team that could be primed to bounce back to the top of the division. Kate, let's start with the Atlanta Braves. Around 10-1 to win the World Series, plus 950 at BetMGM, 5-1 to win the NL pennant, plus 125 their division price, and lined at 93.5 wins. This is a team that won 6 straight division titles before they were absolutely ravaged by injuries last year. Ronald Acuna Jr. will be back at some point in the first half of the season. We'll see what he looks like. But in the meantime, we'll just go out and add Jurickson Profar. And I think they're primed for a big step up from Spencer Schwellenbach as well. I love the Braves in this division this year. The Braves are a team that has tormented me since I was a young boy watching Sid Bream slide across home plate in 1992. So I'm never excited about backing them. But hell, if we're here to make money, I think the Braves are the team in the NL East.
I mean, how could you really go any? The Phillies are the only other team I think I would look at, but the Braves, I mean, so injured last year, everything went wrong for them, and they still won 98 games. So you get Acuna back at some point this season. He's coming up on almost a year since that surgery for the ACL. You add Profar. I can't disagree with anything you just said about the Braves. I think they are the team to beat, and they've dominated this division for the last decade when fully healthy. So what is there to expect anything other than that happening as long as they're not as injury riddled as they were last season, right?
Right. Before we let Jake Casson try and poke holes in our theory about the Braves, which I'm sure he'll do, I do want to say about the Phillies. I know you mentioned they're the other team you would consider at plus 190 to win this division, 91.5 wins. I have backed the Phillies the last couple of years in a belief that they had it all. They had the team constructed just the right way at just the right time. I want to say it feels like, I know as much as Jake is going to yell at me about Christopher Sanchez and NL Cy Young and all that, I just look at this team as getting way too old, way too fast. Bryce Harper's 32 and a half. Schwarber's 32. Castellanos is 33. Real Muto's 34. Max Kepler, who's going to be starting in left field, is 32. Trey Turner's just about 32 as well. This team is not getting any younger. This might be their last gasp. I think they might run out of gas before the finish line this year. Zach Wheeler's 35. Nola's 32. Even Ranger Suarez is pushing 30. I think age catches up with the Phillies in a big way this year. It's why I like the Braves as much as I do for the division. I wouldn't bet 125, but I like the Braves. And I think I'll even put the Mets right behind the Braves because of purely the Soto addition. But that's where I'm at on the East right now, especially because, you've got Senga healthy again, hopefully, if you're the Mets. Manaea, Peterson had a strong year last year. Their rotation, I think, while there's question marks, should be better than last year's. I like the Mets second in this division. If I had to pick a placement, I'd go Braves, Mets, Phils, and then we could argue about 4 or 5, probably Nats, Marlins. But Jake, it feels like it's the Braves division to win unless there's a really strong push from the Mets or the Phillies turn back time.
I'm out on the Mets. I think this team might stink, baby. You might have the carrying of Lindor and Soto and whatever Pete Alonso gives you. I think that rotation is an abject disaster. Like, Sean Manaea's already hurt with an oblique issue. He had a career renaissance last year, but pitchers and oblique issues, that's usually not something that just goes away. So even when he comes back, who knows what that's going to be. Frankie Montas also already hurt, going to be on the shelf for at least 2 months. And even when he's on the field, it's still the Frankie Montas experience, which, ask anybody in Cincinnati or Oakland or New York, usually not super great. So I just don't think this rotation really has it. I think Clay Holmes is good. I think at his best he has Cy Young upside, but in his first year as a starter out of the bullpen, what's that going to look like as far as a full workload? So I don't know what that's going to be. Senga, his calf explodes every other start. We didn't see him at all last year because of that. So I can't put any real confidence that we're going to see him for 30 starts either. I have more confidence in the Mets' young guys, Brandon Sproat and Christian Scott, who's also coming back from elbow injury himself. Scott is. I have more confidence in them than anybody else in that rotation as it currently stands. I think the Mets are going to be all offense, and look how that went for other teams. Like, look at what happened with the Yankees last year when they leaned exclusively on Juan Soto. Yeah, they got there, and then they got smacked in the face in the World Series. So I'm out on the Mets. The Braves, I get it. Acuna back, Strider back. Profar, maybe he does what he did last year in San Diego, but also maybe you get the guy that got cut by the Colorado Rockies 2 years ago. Let me say that one more time. You might get the guy that got cut by the Colorado Rockies and not the all-star in San Diego. I don't know. The reality is probably somewhere in the middle, and the Braves do have a very good habit of getting the most out of mid-outfielders like an Adam Duvall, like guys like Jerks and Profar, like a Ramon Laureano. So that could work out. It's just the Braves are already saying that they're going to take it slow with Acuna and that it might be at least a month. And he's saying he's 95% already, but this is now his second ACL injury. Do you think the Braves are really going to be chomping at the bit to rush him out there? Strider, yeah, he's a physical monster, but elbow surgery and elbow injuries are elbow injuries. Like, those are always very sporadic, and they could go either which way. I like Spencer Schwellenbach. I think he'll take a step forward, but other than that, Reynaldo Lopez, second full year as a starter after he hadn't thrown more than 66 innings since 2019. Chris Sale, I think he's good. I don't know if he's going to be Cy Young again. All of this to say, I think you know where I'm going with this. I really like the Phillies. I think the Phillies are going to bleed through. Like Zach Wheeler, we've been waiting for the demise for 3 years. And it hasn't happened yet. Aaron Nola, yeah, he's probably more of a 3 at this point in his career. He's not that Cy Young caliber guy. You get the flashes, sure, but you're not getting that consistently. He's very erratic. That's always been Aaron Nola's thing. Ranger Suarez, I don't believe that he's a Cy Young winner. I think last year was a little bit fluky. I think he's good, but all this to say, I think Christopher Sanchez is the guy, and let it. I would like it for the record too. I said Christopher Sanchez before Sean Zerillo was on this show, and said Christopher Sanchez as well. Like to get ahead of that before anybody gets it twisted. Love Sean, think he's awesome, think he's very smart. I would just like to say, I'm not stealing that from him. Not saying he stole from me, but I did say it like a week ago. Okay, now that we have that settled. I also think that the demise of Bryce Harper has been very much overstated. Like, yeah, he's drinking raw milk, and God, Bryce, please just go to the grocery store and get regular milk that's pasteurized. Please, I'm begging you. But he's still awesome, and he's not in the outfield. He's at first base, mitigates the risk of injury for the most part for him. Trey Turner, still think he's a very good player. I think the lineup comes through. I think the talent is just too much. Yeah, they're on the wrong side of 30. But I think when push comes to shove, this lineup still has MVPs, all-stars that are going to bleed through, and it's mostly a rotation play for me. The pitching is just ridiculous, and I haven't even mentioned Andrew Painter yet, who was a top 10 prospect in baseball before he underwent elbow surgery, but the guy was throwing 105 like that. Like, it wasn't like you watch this kid's starts. It was like a flick of the wrist, boom, 105 right past you. Like, I think this Phillies staff is much better than anyone else in that division. I think the lineup still has more than enough talent, even if some of these guys start to decline, to be well above average. I'm not saying you have to run and bet the Phillies at plus 180 or plus 190, but I think they're closer to the Braves than this implies, and I'm way out on the Mets.
All right, 91.5 wins. Is that realistic for the Phils? Are you going over, Jake?
I think it's right. Like, I think the number is just right. I think they're a 90 win team. If they hit their peak all year, yeah, they're a 95, 100 win team, but they also could be an 87 win team. So I think the number is just right. I'm not rushing to bet it either way. I think they're a 90 win team, 91 team.
Question. I was going to bring up the fact that Bryce Harper is drinking nature's Gatorade on TikTok these days. I have not heard of this non-pasteurized milk. Why does anyone drink non-pasteurized milk? What are the health benefits for that?
Kate, I'd be lying to you if I said I was in the weeds on raw milk and its benefits. I just trust the milk that is sold to me at the grocery store, and I don't really question it. I've made it 27 years of my life without having an issue with grocery store milk. No reason to question it. Not going to. I will say, Bryce, you look terrible, dude. You look awful.
Yeah,
like in these TikTok videos, he looks sickly. So let's get that corrected because, good Lord.
He's getting the sinking in face like Tom Brady, except Tom Brady's is likely like some sort of cosmetic surgery.
What Does raw milk smell different than regular milk? Like, I have a lot of questions about the raw milk thing. I don't know why we're coming to you as an expert, Jake, but
I was going to say, again, I'm not really in those weeds as far as raw milk goes. I get my milk from the grocery store, so not really. I'm not in those streets as far as raw milk goes.
All right, what about the bottom two teams in this division? Is there any opportunity on either one of these two? Like, I could see you, speaking of being in the weeds, popping up out of the weeds like the dog in Duck Hunt. You're too young to remember Duck Hunt. That was Nintendo.
I know what Duck Hunt is.
And being like, ooh, Dylan Cruz, look out for the Nats. But like, is there any reason or anything to bet at the bottom of this division?
Hey, well, when you preface it like that, well, yeah, I like the Nationals. I think this team actually could be kind of plucky. Their win total opened at 68.5, and I bet that over immediately. It's now sitting at 72.5. CLV, woo. And nobody yell at me because I did give that out when these win totals came out, so go check the receipts on that one. Anyway, I still like the over 72.5. I think this Nationals team is actually decently good. I really like the lineup core that they have. Cruz, Wood, those two alone are going to be probably all-stars. C.J. Abrams is still there as long as he's not in the casinos in Chicago, should be completely fine. And I like the additions on the fringes that they made. Josh Bell is a good veteran player that could lead them, in the right direction at least. And when he's on fire, he's on fire. But I really like the rotation here. Mackenzie Gore, we're going to do this thing again where at some point a 100-1 will pop on him for NL Cy Young. He'll have a couple starts where he strikes out 12 or 13, and we'll look at it. I'm not going to fall for the trap and bet it, but he has that kind of stretch of dominance where he has that streak. I think he's an all-star caliber pitcher. And they really got a lot out of guys like Jake Irvin and Mitchell Parker last year, which I think will really help them. They have some prospects on the way. I think the Nationals will be in that 73, 74 win range. I think they'll play spoiler. Like, I think you're going to be at the end of the year, and it's going to be Braves and Phillies and the division lead separated by like a game or two, and they're going to look back and say, God, the Nationals, like the damn Nationals are the reason that we dropped a couple games here or there. I think they could play spoiler. I think they'll be plucky. I'll be interested in betting on them game-to-game basis. And obviously, like player props for James Wood and Dylan Cruz, going to be weighing on those two.
I'm not totally out on the Mets like you are, but for those that are totally out on the Mets, 2-1 to miss the playoffs. I mean, I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
I like that better than basically 2-1 to win the division. Like, it seems like it's a lot easier to miss the playoffs than it is to win the division when you're in a division with the Braves and Phillies as well.
Yeah, and again, I think I'm out on the Phils this year. I think like there is a massive amount of age that catches up with them. I mean, I guess I could bet them plus 225 to miss the playoffs. I'm just curious to see. The top of this division is going to be fascinating. Like, I think we're all going to have red hot takes about it, probably like halfway through May before Memorial Day even. We're going to be like, I told you about the Mets, or, oh, told you the Phillies were getting old, or, whatever it may be. And then inevitably, everything will change again before Labor Day. And I still do think all three teams are going to be involved in the conversation beyond the deadline, beyond Labor Day. And it's going to be probably the most fascinating division to watch. Again, I've said that about like 7 divisions this week, even though Major League Baseball only has 6. But this one, I think I really mean it this time.